Here.
Trustee Hoffman,
Here.
Trustee Moreno,
Here.
Trustee Vela,
Here.
Trustee Vettis,
Here.
Student Trustee Geronimo.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So let's move on to the flag salute. And student trustee, would you do us the honor of leading us in the flag salute?
Give me 1 second. All right. Thank you so much. So place your hands over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States,
the United States of
America.
America,
to the republic
to the republic
stands
for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
Liberty and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, student trustee. Okay, everyone, as we get our agenda opened up, so today's study session is principally dedicated to a Board of Trustees accreditation training session. For a good portion of the board, this will be new because it's been a few years since we've actually done accreditation last. For a couple of us, we used to do accreditation on a rolling basis, and I think there's 3 of you that were here the last time that accreditation happened for all the schools together. So accreditation is obviously a really critical and important assessment that happens for all of our 9 colleges. We take it very seriously, and we're certainly proud of the work that we do to uphold our teaching and learning and college experience for everyone to the highest standards. But this is part of that assessment to demonstrate to the rest of the world that we take those things seriously, and it is the stamp of approval from the body that assesses all of the community colleges in this region. So with that, most of the meeting today is dedicated to that, to ensure that all of you can ask the appropriate questions and have the time that it takes to know and to demonstrate how serious we are about going through accreditation and ensuring that all of our schools meet that standard here. So with that, colleagues, if there are no objections, the approval of the agenda is before you. If I see no objections, then we'll move the item and move forward to public comments. We have first of all, any objections? Nope, seeing none. We'll move forward to public comment. We actually have on our agenda a couple of moments for public comments. The first one is about regular agenda board items. And so if I can ask the public that the 2 items before us are a resolution in celebration of API Heritage Month, and the second dealing with the Board of Trustees accreditation. After this section of public comment, there is an additional public comment that is for closed session and for broader items not on the agenda. So would ask the public if they're interested in making a comment to sort of respect the 2 spaces, because we definitely want to make sure we get done the business before us, but while at the same time balancing the need for the public to be able to have a voice and provide a voice to the Board of Trustees. So with that, let me read the quick disclosure in terms of this first item, in terms of and this will be for both public comment sections. It's essentially that the First Amendment of the Brown Act guarantee a member of the public the right to criticize a public employee in the performance of his or her duties. However, speakers are encouraged to focus their comments on issues relevant to the conduct of the public's business rather than on private or unrelated matters. Can I ask Luca or Crystal, are there any persons signed up to address the Board of Trustees regarding regular agenda items?
There is not.
Okay. And let me ask if there are any individuals from the audience that wish to address on those regular agenda items. And if I'm looking through the participant section, so if there is no one there, then, and I do understand there may be individuals that would like to address the board. We will take that immediately after the ACCJC training for us here. So I see none. So let me move forward to to the first item, which is the resolution in celebration of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Mr. Fong, can you present this item for the board's consideration?
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and hope everyone's doing well and staying safe in these challenging times. Every May in America, in this country, we celebrate the diversity of the varied diaspora of the diverse Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. And I'm proud to join my colleagues, Board President Vettis and Vice President Buona, and my colleagues in recognizing API Heritage Month. Just last week at our API committee with the Chancellor, we heard from powerful student voices, including Lauren Tam, who's transferring to a four-year university, but she was explaining her experience at Harbor College as a student athlete, as an Asian American student. And we also heard from Connie Changzhou, Chief Executive Officer, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, who advised us on how to be active bystanders and to help deflect and detract from recent hate incidents. And as I know, in our district, we're looking at data disaggregation, and Trustee Buona has been a big advocate on this, along with my colleagues, as we continue to look for additional resources for our DACA and immigrant students, and amplifying our voices to denounce hate crimes, API hate, as we continue the conversation on ethics studies. So there's still a lot more work to be done in our city, in our region, in our country, in ending racism and xenophobia. But today, we're proud to stand and to celebrate the significant contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to the history of the United States. And so I encourage my colleagues to join in celebrating API Heritage Month and in encouraging an aye vote for this resolution. And happy Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month to everyone out there. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Trustee Fong. So let me take a motion and a second, and then I'll open the floor for other comments.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Buona,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Fong. I think this is one resolution we'd all like to motion and second here, but we have a motion and second. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Fong. And Trustee Hoffman, comments or questions?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for presenting this resolution, and thank you for your comments, Trustee Fong. I just want to put out a shameless plug for my colleague. As many of you know, I work in another district and I run the Career Center, and we are doing a career panel on Thursday at 5 p.m. In honor of AAPI Heritage Month. And we have a very special guest, and my staff reached out to him, and that is Trustee Mike Fong. So if you can tune in, he will be speaking to our students on our career panel. So thank you so much, Trustee Fong. We're excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Hoffman, for the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
President Vettis,
Trustee Villa.
I also want to thank both yourself, Trustee Mike Fong, and Vice President Buona for bringing this forward. I think that we have come a long way in the way that we have stood up for Asian American rights, and in particular, the creation of the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Asian American Pacific Islander Student Affairs continues to be important, and also lend myself to the intersectionality of the LGBT Affairs Committee in any efforts. I, again, thank the district as well as Trustee Mike Fong for putting this and cementing it, which is a very much needed discussion throughout Los Angeles and the LACCD community. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Vela. Appreciate that. Okay, colleagues, if there's no other comments, I will, obviously this month is a busy month. We all have our lavender backgrounds, and we recognize everything from immigrants to workers to acknowledging and understanding what our role and what we can do about anti-hate, to be anti-hate, and as laid out in this resolution, there are so many simple steps that are profound steps that have been taken with the way that we're embracing, the way that we're supporting, and the way that we're helping communities of color, and in this case, with this resolution, the API community. Being able to acknowledge and distinguish the great diversity in the Asian American community in our district and throughout the country is absolutely critical and significant.
We certainly understand from dealing with the xenophobia, dealing with the hate, at the same time, we're also dealing with how to help people become successful in their career paths. And so LACCD is all of that. And Trustee Fong, you've been a great leader in that from the day one that you've joined our board here in terms of these types of efforts. So, in honor of May and all the things we do in May, this is certainly a month to celebrate. It's certainly a month to acknowledge. It's certainly a month to validate the fact that we also have lots more work to do. So, with that, if I can ask Lupe, a roll call vote, please.
Student Trustee Geronimo's advisory vote.
Yes.
Trustee Buelna.
Yes.
Trustee Fong.
Yes.
Trustee Henderson.
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman.
Yes.
Trustee Moreno.
Yes.
Trustee Vela.
Yes.
Trustee Vettis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The item passes. And next we'll move on to the Board of Trustees accreditation training session. So it gave my brief introduction at the beginning of the meeting, but I'd like to pass the agenda along to the Chancellor to invite our guests today. And I know we had a quick comment in the panel here by Trustee Hoffman. For as much as we want to keep the Hollywood Squares conversation going, we do have our agenda, and I think at this point, like if we can, if there's presentation materials, if we can figure out sort of the best way for us and the audience to view the discussion before us. So with that, Chancellor, kick it off, and then our visiting presenters, if you have suggestions along with our technical and support staff, let us know what's the best way to view this all together.
Okay, thank you, Board President Vettis, members of the board, colleagues. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're in for a treat this evening. Thank you so much to our colleagues from the ACCJC who are joining us today. It's always good to see you both. And what I did is I invited Dr. Corner to join us because I'd like him to formally introduce our colleagues, guests who are with us today. Dr. Corner, as the Vice Chancellor for Educational Programs and Institutional Effectiveness, is indeed our Chief Academic Officer and is our district's Chief Accreditation Liaison and Officer. So because of that, he plays a significant role. And I can recall Dr. Corner, we began our formal relationship with you as Vice Chancellor about, a week or so before, or 2 weeks before the 2016 accreditation visit. So it was quite a welcoming party for you to coordinate a 9 college and district office accreditation visit. You did an excellent job in doing so, along with our colleges. So we're at that point again, colleagues, where we will be visiting, have a visiting team or set of teams here in 2023. So it's appropriate that the board position itself for the latest training from the ACCJC as we prepare for the comprehensive visit in 2023. So Dr. Corner, take it from here. And again, welcome everyone.
Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. This is an exciting time. The last time we did this, we were the first time we did all 9 colleges at once. And with no fear and complete bravery, the ACCJC is back to use us as we enter into a new era of accreditation that once again has a different process that is focused on being more collaborative, more focused on institutional effectiveness, and less about compliance. And I have to say that in working with the ACCJC over the last few years, it's been truly remarkable how these changes have been implemented in order to make sure that the process is more collegial, more focused on student learning, and making sure that colleges are as successful as they can be rather than looking for reasons to penalize colleges. And I think that we have no better spokespeople for that than the president of the ACCJC, Stephanie Droker, and the vice president, Kevin Bontebal. And I will just hand off to them and allow them to give the presentation to the board on the role and responsibility that you all will take on over the next 18 months.
Thank you, Dr. Corner, and thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez, and good evening to all the trustees for the Los Angeles Community College District. I hope you all are doing well. This last year and couple months has been trying for all of us. So it's great to see you all this evening. And thank you for having us this evening to talk with you about accreditation and specifically the board's role and responsibilities with accreditation. As you heard, I'm Kevin Bontenball. I'm one of the vice presidents for ACCJC, and I'm also one of the liaisons to all 9 of the LA community colleges, along with my illustrious colleague, Dr. Stephanie Joker, who I'll let introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie, and it is a pleasure to be with you, with your whole LACCD community. And we are looking forward to working with you. It's as Ryan said, it's an exciting time. For those of you who don't know me, I've been president of ACCJC for about 1.5 years now. And prior to that, I was senior vice president at the commission. And then before that, even vice president. So I've been with the commission for the last few years. And I come from a California community college, the system, where I was faculty and academic senate president and chief instructional officer and everything in between. So we hope that this will be a conversation. We would like to engage with you, answer your questions, and of course, update you on all the changes that Ryan alluded to in his opening. So thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. And likewise, I'm relatively new to the commission. I'm in about my 9th, halfway through my 9th month. And but before that, I was a commissioner for 5 years on the commission, and I've been 23 years in the California Community College system in many different roles. So I'm really excited to be in this position and really looking forward to working with everyone and all the colleges in your accreditation efforts. So I like to always just kind of start by saying that doing the work of accreditation is really exciting work. I know some of us, sometimes we may not feel that way. We might get nervous about accreditation or see it as bureaucratic, and there's a little bit of bureaucracy to it, I'll give you that. But really, accreditation is a process for ensuring and promoting quality education and ultimately advancing student learning and achievement. And in this process, we are asked at times to take a look at what we're doing so we can validate that we're doing what we need to be doing to meet our mission and to identify areas where we can improve. So this self-reflection is important. And if I look at it in that way, it becomes sort of less burdensome and much more meaningful. And so we do have a PowerPoint we're going to share with you. So I apologize. We're going to kind of take away the Hollywood squares for a little bit, but I will share my screen and bring that up. But as we go through the presentation, as Stephanie mentioned, please ask any questions that you have at any point. We don't mind being interrupted. We want to make sure that all of your questions are getting answered and that you're getting the information that you need from us. So here's what we're going to cover this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about accreditation, just as a refresher, its purpose and the process. We'll talk some about some changes at ACCJC that have been going on, and we're going to look specifically at the role and responsibilities of governing boards related to accreditation, and also your role in reviewing the ICERs. So basically, as I mentioned, accreditation is this practice of quality control that ensures institutions are meeting, in our case, higher education standards that promote institutional excellence and advance meaningful and effective student learning and achievement. And here in the United States, we're really fortunate because this process of accreditation is performed through peer review. So we as peers evaluate each other against these standards and make recommendations where needed for improvement, and also identify areas where excellent work is being done. And I think this is, we can all probably agree that this is a much more effective and meaningful process than having a government agency do the evaluation, which is the case in many other countries. So why do we bother doing this? Why do we bother engaging in accreditation? I mean, other than what I've mentioned about it, promoting quality education, institutional effectiveness, it's also, of course, important in order for a college to receive Title IV funding or federal financial aid. You must be accredited by an accreditor that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, which of course ACCJC is. And accreditation is also important because it helps with transferring credits for students between institutions. And accreditation communicates to the public, including our students, that the institution is accountable for its performance in these important academic standards and is of high quality. And it's also a framework, as I mentioned, for helping colleges maintain this quality and providing opportunities for improvement through the evaluations that it does in developing its institutional self-evaluation report. So this slide just kind of briefly shows who we accredit and where those colleges are located. And we basically accredit two-year community and junior colleges who offer primarily associate degrees, although there are now provisions for these institutions to offer baccalaureate degrees. And I think West LA College does have a baccalaureate in dental hygiene. But the baccalaureate degrees cannot be the institution's primary mission. It's really the associate degree level. And so in addition to many California community colleges, which ACCJC does accredit, we also accredit colleges, as you see here on the screen, in Hawaii and other parts of the Pacific, including some private and faith-based institutions. And I mention this because it's important to keep in mind that the standards that we evaluate institutions against are broader in focus. So we tend to, in the California community college system, get very California Community College centric or focused or Title V focused, and we have a slew of initiatives, as I'm sure you're all aware of. But the standards apply to all the institutions in which ACCJC accredits, so they're at a broader sort of level and not California centric. Like our member institutions, ACCJC also has a mission, and we have core values, and our mission is really all about supporting our member institutions in advancing educational quality and student learning. And we actualize this through our core values and our strategic plan and goals. You can find our most strategic plan on our website, and the goals that are in our current strategic plan are focused on 4 areas: increasing transparency, improving communication and collaboration, fostering institutional innovation, and leading advocacy efforts on accreditation. And Stephanie will talk some more about some of those aspects related to some of the things that have been going on with ACCJC.
So how do we do that? Like our member colleges, ACCJC as an agency is also in its own continuous path of improvement. And so here are some of the things that we've implemented over the last couple of years that help us meet our goals. So one of them is we have a VP portfolio model, and we started this about 3 years ago. Rather than just training you for an ICER and then leaving you to your own devices, and when I say ICER, that's an institutional self-evaluation report, you actually have a liaison, a dedicated liaison. In this case, you have 2. You get myself and Kevin. And we are your resources for all of your colleges and their personnel to engage in this work. So they have a face and a name, and someone who gets to know the colleges intimately, understands their mission and students. We are here for your success. We are here to support you. We are not reviewers of your college. We are not the commission. We are not the decision makers, but we are absolutely committed to your success and accreditation. We also have worked really hard to improve our training and resources. I hope you'll see that today. One of the things that we do pre-COVID is we actually come to the colleges and do the trainings on the ground. We don't just do it virtually, and we're very intensive about our training. So your colleges received training, each college did to start their ICER process, and we will engage in them throughout the 2 years as the reports are becoming developed before they come to your review, so that your personnel have the most updated information and they're moving along. We work really hard to lighten the burden on the colleges regarding accreditation activities. We know that every resource that goes into accreditation on the behalf of a college is taking resources away from students. And so we are really diligent to make sure we have to do this. We want to make sure our colleges have access to Title IV, that their degrees and credits transfer, that students are able to be mobile in academia because of accreditation, but we also want to be very cognizant of what we ask our colleges to do. And then I'm going to speak about this. Ryan alluded to it, but we are going into a new comprehensive review structure, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then finally, we have launched a new standards review process. So last time you were the beta testers on the 2014 standards. We're now going to be doing the 2024 standards, and we're in the middle of developing those now. We have already 90 people from the field engaged in this work with the ACCJC. It's the most collaborative process we've ever had, and we're really proud and really excited about it. So, Kevin?
Thank you. So this slide just kind of shows that we're on a 7-year accreditation cycle and the different sort of steps within that cycle or components of the cycle. And all of the LA colleges are beginning, Stephanie mentioned, their institutional self-evaluation reports. And so you're at the beginning of your next sort of 7-year accreditation cycle. And we provided, as Stephanie mentioned, training last fall to all 9 of the LA district colleges in beginning that process of developing their institutional self-evaluation report. And so this is exciting because you're starting fresh. You're beginning a new cycle, and it's important to keep in mind that all the colleges in the district are fully accredited institutions. There's nothing that's coming forward into this cycle from a previous cycle. You're starting fresh, and the commission recognizes and sees the colleges as accredited institutions. The teams are trained to view the colleges in that way. And so that's exciting. And so the colleges will be working on developing their ICERs and communicating through those with evidence how they are aligned with the standards that we have. After the ICER is put together, you will then, there will be a team, and Stephanie's going to talk some more detail about what that new format looks like in terms of the comprehensive peer visit. But from that will potentially be some recommendations or commendations that will go to the commission for their decision making. And then there may be some follow-up if there are recommendations of, to better align with the standard, or where you might be the college might be out of compliance with the standard, and then you go to a midterm report, which you may remember you've kind of just submitted a midterm report not that long ago. Each of the colleges did, and then you start a new cycle again. Stephanie, do you have something you wanted to add? I saw you.
No, I guess I would just say that a lot of times we think of the development of the report, that self-evaluation report, as the final exam, but it's actually step 1 of your comprehensive review cycle. And it's important to remember that because you're on a clean slate, you're fully accredited, and your colleges are fully accredited, and we want to celebrate the great work they've been doing in this report.
Yes, absolutely. So this slide, Stephanie's going to talk about this new formative summative model.
So we realized, for those of you who have been engaged in this work, we realized that our comprehensive review structure was really what we consider summative only. So I'll give you an example. So I used to teach political science. And what we would do with our colleges at ACCJC is the traditional model was the college would write the report, it gets submitted to the commission, then a team comes out, writes up findings, validating what the narrative and evidence that the college submitted. That body of work goes to the commission for a decision. Well, to me, it was like we were grading students on the final exam only. So when I taught political science, the way I looked at our structure was the same way I would look if students came into my class, I gave them a syllabus and said, you know what, in 18 weeks, I'll see you at the final exam, and whatever you get on the final exam is your grade for the class. Well, if we aren't willing to do that for students, why would we do that for our members? Why would we do that for institutions? So we've intentionally embedded an improvement component, a formative component, to help institutions move along if they need to prior to commission decision. And so that's what you're seeing on the screen. So now what it looks like and what you'll be engaged in is you still write the report just like you would. But rather than the team coming right away when you submit it to the commission, the team's going to actually meet and do what we call a desk review. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at all the areas and the ICER and the evidence where they can validate you meet the standards. Those will get written up. They're taken off the table. Those standards, and only those standards where they want to look at, we're calling them core inquiries, where they might want to ask questions in a celebration of a commendation or ask questions if there's an area for improvement, whether it's to improve or for alignment to be compliant with some of the standards, they're going to notify the college right away. The college will then have 6 months to work on those areas or to get additional evidence or to be prepared to answer the questions. And then a focus site visit comes the semester following. And that site visit is only a few of the team members. It is only focused on those standards they identified in the core inquiries. So not only does the college get time to improve if it needs to, or mature plans or address issues that they didn't know they may not even have had, but also we're saving money and resources because the site visit is no longer 10 to 14 people. It's 2 or 3 people who come and validate the remaining issues that could not be validated during the desk review. Then all of that body of work gets written up and sent to the commission for their decision. So it lengthens the comprehensive review time from 1 semester to 2 semesters, but we are really excited because we are seeing colleges able to grasp onto the information. It's all transparent, it's open, and they're able to do something with the information prior to the commission taking action on the institution. Do you have any questions on this?
Colleagues, if you have a question, raise your hand or go ahead and jump in. I don't see any on my side.
I have a question.
Trustee Moreno?
Yes. So we'll have a review. Basically, we'll do the study. We'll have a small team come down. You said it's 2 people.
So, Trustee Moreno, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Could you repeat that?
So would you go through the process at the beginning? What is it that the colleges need to do in advance of the 2-member group that comes down and evaluates what we do?
Well, so it could be, 2 members, it could be 4 members, but it's a much more condensed. It depends on how many standards and the issues or the areas of the standard. But there's nothing for the college to do before that. They submit their ICER report to the commission, and the team does the desk review in that first semester. They send the core inquiries and a report to the college. The college just reviews it and in that time can be putting plans into place or addressing some of the issues. There's no additional report, no additional anything. They just continue with their work before the team comes the following semester.
So we're having a desk review as opposed to a validation study?
So the desk review is for the team that reviews your college. There's no change for the college on its report. That is exactly the same.
I didn't even know what's his manager.
It's really how the team operates, and then giving the college a heads up on any issues or areas of commendation that might need to be, that would be looked at during the site visit.
Okay, all right.
Trustees, if I can ask, Trustees, if I can ask if you could mute if you're not talking. I know sometimes there's a crosstalk there, but please unmute if you're not able to, or if you have to have other interruptions around your personal space.
So, Trustee Moreno, did I answer your question?
Yes, I think so.
I know it's hard to grasp in one slide, but I can assure you that Dr. Corner and all your college presidents and ALOs are aware of this new structure and they're prepared, and we are excited to work with them.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Moreno. Trustee, any other questions from the trustees? No, that just means the presentation is pretty well presented before us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And those dates you see there on the left in the arrows are the dates that the colleges will engage in the different components of this process. So fall of 22 is when the team ISO review will happen and the core inquiries will be developed. And then spring of 23 is when this focus site visit will occur. And June of 23 then is when the commission will make its decision on the accredited status of the colleges.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Trustee Hoffman, I think I see your hand.
Yeah, I'll say something. I just want to say thank you. Stephanie, I think you presented at the league conference just recently. Was that you?
I did, yes.
And yeah, so the presentation was excellent. And I think a lot of trustees were inspired to actually try to apply to be on a visiting team. And then I just went through a process because I work in another district, a really great exercise for accreditation. I work in Glendale Community College. So we're in the middle of accreditation as well, or the beginning steps. So thank you. This is so much
You're getting a double time.
Yeah, double time. And I was chairing the institutional effectiveness committee when I first got on the board, and in 2016 when we were going through accreditation. So it was quite an undertaking, and this just sounds so much better than it was before, and much more streamlined. So thank you.
Thank you. We have colleges that are going through it right now, and we are really seeing this openness of transparency and understanding, because that's what accreditation is all about, right? Is that we all rise to the challenge of academic quality, and we know how to articulate that amongst our peers.
Another question. So we're not going to go through trying to find 10 teams, hotel rooms and meals and all of that, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, so we'll be working with, so again, the feds, the department and the federal requirements, the criteria requires that there's an on-site visit, but it can be a very narrow team. And so while you'll have a 10-person team doing the initial review during the desk review, when the on-site team comes, like I said, depending on what they're looking at in the core inquiries, it could be 2, 3, 4 people. And so, and we're looking at a day or two rather than the full week. So this is really going to be a lot easier. We are working with Ryan, who's helping us coordinate with the colleges. And then of course, we're working with each of the college CEOs and ALOs, accreditation liaison officers. So the logistics will be a lot easier.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was only going to say, when I first got to the board, we were doing an entire accreditation process every year for a different school. So it felt like I was always doing accreditation my first term in office, and either I learned it really well or I still have some PTSD from doing it that way. But much clearer process. And I know during Trustee Hoffman's, what she mentioned during that period, putting them all 9 together was a good step. There was certainly a lot of fear and hesitation and concern because we were used to doing it all the time, but it feels like a good breather doing it this way. And then it's certainly clear as it's presented to us here. So thank you for that. So Kevin.
You're welcome. And, even though you have 2 of us as liaisons, Stephanie and I are still trying to figure out how we're going to divide ourselves up amongst 9 institutions when they're all going through this process. But that's not for your concern. We'll figure that out. In LA traffic too.
You'll know how we feel.
Yes, exactly. And I wanted to thank you, Trustee Hoffman, for mentioning the opportunity to participate. So I'll extend that to any of you. If you're interested in participating in this process, on our website, there's a peer reviewer interest form that you can complete and fill out and get into our database as potential peer reviewers on teams in the future. So I would strongly encourage you to consider that. All right, so here, this slide shows the standards, or the first 2 standards. So we have 4 standards, sort of main areas, if you will, and you'll see like standard 1 is about mission and academic quality and integrity and institutional effectiveness. And standard 2 is about student learning programs and services. And within those, there's areas that are looked at. And then standard 3 is all on resources, physical, technology, financial, human resources. And then standard 4 on leadership and governance And you notice that the boards have a area within that standard, C on governing boards. And there are, different 13 standards in particular that are looked at related to governing boards. And so we want to talk about some of these in particular and how they relate to your role and responsibilities. But before I get into that, let me just mention that throughout all the standards are these kind of important tenets that kind of run throughout the standards. And you as a board have a role in these through your policy development and the direction or setting of priorities that you do for the colleges. And so, for example, you review metrics and outcomes that are aligned to the mission of the colleges and the district and inform how well colleges are accomplishing their missions. You're aware of institutional planning processes for improvement. You ensure that the district or colleges have adequate resources to accomplish their missions. And, you participate in this process through your own self-analysis and evaluation against these standards. And we're going to talk some more about that in particular. So let's look specifically at the role and responsibilities that the board has with accreditation. So here are two challenges I'll present to you as a board, which play out in the standards, in particular in 4C on governing boards. And the first is, how do you provide mission-directed leadership? And the second is, how do you ensure high performance of the board and the colleges? So these are particularly highlighted in the standards you see in parentheses there, 4C1 and 5 and 4C10. And so I want to just show those to you and read them to you so you understand what they're about. So 4C1 says the institution has a governing board that has authority over and responsibilities for policies. That's a key word. You're going to see policies or hear that a lot, right? And those policies are to ensure the academic quality, integrity, and effectiveness of the student learning programs and services and the financial stability of the institution, or in your cases, the colleges. So that's, in a nutshell, how you provide mission-directed leadership. You do it through your policies. And then 4C5 states the governing board establishes policies, there's that word again, policies, that are consistent with the college and district or citizen college's mission to ensure the quality, integrity, and improvement of student learning programs and services and the resources necessary to support them. And then it goes on to sentence say, the governing board has ultimate responsibility for educational quality, legal matters, and financial integrity and stability.
Kevin?
So as stated, you provide mission-directed leadership by having policies,
Kevin?
right? But you want to ensure that those policies are consistent with the colleges, the missions of the colleges within the district. So ultimately, as a board, you're a policy-making body, right? And you have authority and responsibility for policies. And it's through this authority and responsibility that you can set expectations of excellence for colleges within the district. And I think I see someone with their hand up.
Yeah, I do have a comment, and then I'll pass it on to Trustee Ball, and I'm going to take the chair's prerogative there with that one to jump in front of him. So at our board over the years, I think we've all had a chance to see a college's mission statement and sort of rebalance it out with the district statement. I think we've all been around quite a bit of time to see, or many of us have been around enough time to see sort of our master plan concepts and those kinds of things. But it's always been an interesting sort of balance for me to know that some of this gets sort of from the bottom up process, where it's an approval process in a sense, an exchange and approval process through our committees and ultimately through the final board. But there is also sort of in an annual process, we have board goals and objectives that sometimes begin at the board interest level and becomes a filter from top down. When we talk about this mission directed styles of leadership, I always take it as we have this great balancing act things coming from the bottom up versus sort of setting the stand. Since we're not an appointed board, we're an elected board. We come to this table on behalf of the voters and the interest groups at large, but trying to sort of find balance for when essentially who's driving it forward. Is it driven top down or bottom up? Is sort of one of the great challenges I've always struggled with. And sometimes it's just the balancing act is where we just say we're going to go. Sometimes it's a little bit of this and a little bit of the other way. But how do we sort of translate that into because mission directed is on the words there, but it's the sort of formation and the process of creating mission or priorities that sort of, is there a best practice way? Is it better coming ground up, or is it better sometimes coming top down, or if it's just a balancing act, which is what we've been striving for?
Well, I think you're right in that it's a little bit of a balancing act, particularly in a large district like yourself, right? Because each college has their unique missions, their unique student populations, and so on and so forth. And you're trying to set policy sort of at a high level for the entire district that support those institutions' missions of quality and excellence. So there is that, and you can set goals and priorities for the district, and then the colleges can work to sort of meet those goals and priorities within the context of their institutions and the uniqueness of the colleges.
So that comment was to frame this question, which is often. And Stephanie, you have a comment. So let me just say this.
Jump in, Mr. President, before you go to the next part, because I think there's something that's really fundamentally important to this conversation, and that is our standards don't tell you how to do that. You are a California public institution, but if I was talking to a private independent institution, this would be a completely different conversation.
Right.
And so as far as accreditation standards go, there is no best practice because it's unique to the culture and the organization of the institution itself. And I think so Kevin was helping you balance, but I'm going to actually I'm going to say it a little differently. It's really up to you. That's what the mission directed leadership is supposed to be, yeah. So,
and I was going to say, so sort of, and that's the way sort of we understand it. And that's the way we've been operating. But the challenge is, since there's not a lot of evaluators that come from districts like ours, that sometimes the biggest challenge is a group of individuals who might be from a smaller space where it may function a little differently. Could still be in the public, still be California, still have all the sort of similar, but just this, and I'll use one of Trustee Moreno's lines sometimes. We could spend 15 minutes on something that's millions of dollars and critically important to a place where it never feels like it's enough time based on the amount of money, but because of the size and because of sort of the nature of our agendas, that may be sufficient time considering what we are. But in terms of just sort of, and I remember the last time talking to a few accreditation folks, they just spent a lot of time sort of trying to understand the size and scale. And it's always sort of a challenge trying to be mission directed and following our process and procedures with size and scale that's substantially larger than most. I think one other similar scale, maybe not quite as large, but similar, districts that are 3-4 colleges, that tends to be more of the trend in the state as opposed to those that are 9. When they're in with us, they sort of get it a little faster and a little easier as opposed to single district. But it's just sometimes the way the teams are put together, and that's just something I've always been sensitive on, trying to balance it. Know that Stephanie, is exactly as you laid it out. It's kind of the way I feel, because it is a product of what we are. But the hope is as we get sort of teams together, that people view it just the way that sort of you and Kevin, even in nuanced in the difference of what you laid out, to have that understanding is monumental for us and really critical, important for us, just the way we are. So thank you for that. Let me go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we have cross-functional teams. So they come from all walks of life. They'll come from independence. They come from the Hawaii system. They come from California. They come from all different types, your peers across the membership. And that's important because they'll give you different perspectives. They don't just come from multi-college districts in California. It's a unique thing. But I think it's also important to remember that let me give you an example. I had, I was on several teams, just like Kevin was before I went to the commission 5 years ago. And I remember one of the peer reviewers was looking at a district and he said, he was looking at the flow chart of like the budget allocation model. And he says, I don't understand how they operationalize that. And my response was, it doesn't matter if you understand it. It matters if they do. So the question at your level, at the board level is, what are our policies and do we follow them? And if you're doing that, and whatever those procedures are across the campuses, whatever their policies are across the campuses, because there's not just board policies, right? There's college policies, and they're following it. Well, that's what academic quality is. It's when we do things when we don't write it down. It's when we do things where we don't take into the context of our mission. So I'll leave you with that. I know there's another question. We could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Trustee Bona.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to be a contrarian here. Actually, what Kevin, I mean, nothing against you, Kevin, what you said, and I need you to explain why you were emphasizing policy and to be specific on policy. Let me tell you why. I actually find this somewhat disturbing. You know, in higher education, specifically in communities of color, you know, institutions simply don't get things done. You know, they get words like mission and, you know, the governing board has the authority over responsibility. But when it comes down to actually outcomes, graduation, and moving things forward, you know, you guys as institutions really don't focus on that. So when I hear mission, I'm a trustee. I have fiduciary responsibility to review, making sure that enrollment's happening, making sure that we're reviewing things. I think when you say, because we had another person from ACCT kind of said, you know your place as trustees. You know, your only policy, you're not involved in fiduciary, you're not involved in developing bonds, you're not involved in monitoring of the system, right? So when I hear you saying that, you know, you don't get a good reaction. You may think, oh, you know, you're the certifying entity, you know, but we can also tell you that your presentation right now, at least to me, didn't come off as positive at all, because it's not clear at all, nor functional for us.
Well, I apologize for that if that's how you're taking it. I mean, we're just communicating what our standards specify that we have, that we're evaluating governing boards against.
No, I understand, but you emphasize a specific policy, right? So if someone were to review this in a few years, well, you didn't ask what policy specifically meant. So if you're going to emphasize it like that and set such a high level 20,000 foot, you know, a term such as policy, repeat it over and over, that's very, very important, because this slide right here is very important, because you're telling us that and you're going to be judging us by that.
Yes, that's the board's responsibility, is for setting policies for the institutions.
Right, but what do you mean by policy? I understand, I have a PhD in political science, focused on policy. I understand policy, but it's your job to specifically describe what you mean by policy. Does that include monitoring? Does that include being the good fiduciary? Can we be on the finance committees? You've got to define that, sir.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't suggest, we don't want to see boards getting into the day-to-day operations of the institution. So that's where boards can get into trouble in terms of our standards, because our standards are focused on a high level with policy. And if we see board members now participating in committees, college committees, or directing the staff within an institution how the work should be accomplished or done, then that's not in alignment with what our standards are for boards.
Can you define policy?
May I chime in, Mr. Chair?
Well, we're having a presentation here in terms of, I mean, it's a very, very important thing what we're being told here. I mean, Chancellor, I understand, you and I had this conversation, but in terms of this accrediting body, I mean, they should have that definition.
Trustee, I mean, there's some part of your question I'm struggling to understand too. Could you sort of rephrase the question
It's like, what does policy mean is a super general one, but
Well,
could you contextualize it a little better?
Right. Okay. So we were just told that trustees should not get involved in the committees at the colleges, right? Okay. But what about, as trustees, we're reviewing the budget. We're looking, for instance, our debate over ethnic studies. We're looking at all kinds of issues related to where the district is going, right? So there's this general sense of, well, policy, right? So we went from high level policy down to, are you deciding who the faculty are? We're in the middle, and Trustee Vela in one meeting, read from ACCT because ACCT tried to tell us the same thing, and Trustee Vela read off from ACCT that really had a lot better definition, but really clarified our role as trustees. So we're getting this cookie cutter mission-directed leadership statement, but it doesn't jive with what we as a district for our 220,000 students have to do. And the word policy was emphasized several times. So if you're emphasizing policy, what do you mean by it? Setting rules, we're not reviewing financials. What do you mean by that?
If I could ask this, Trustee, and thank you for trying to frame it for me so I can understand where you're getting to. I wonder sometimes, and I know there's a couple times you mentioned ACCT, which is a different associate. This is accreditation, and sometimes the language is a little different, and that's a resource for us as trustees, as well as the state league, where we're trying to do best practice. We're also in the midst, Kevin and Stephanie, we're in the midst of aligning all of our board policies and documents and procedures. And so we got a lot of sort of convergence that's happening that sometimes, sort of makes, we're looking to make things consistent across the board. So perhaps Trustee Wellman and if Kevin and Stephanie would be open to it, maybe this is a dialogue that we can continue and sort of clarify in ways that it can take all the different pieces. Because I'm hearing you, Trustee, where we have our board rules that we're doing, we have the sort of encouragement at ACCT, the touch to trustee trainings over at the league, and then of course I think obviously the most critical is here now, because this is accreditation. Everything else is a support system for us and our membership to it. But this is the core accreditation pieces. But there's certainly, as we sort of come to understandings and better spaces, this is why we're kicking it off like this, to start and to get to common understanding as we're going down the process of peer review. It's the core of ACCJC is a peer review process. But I think we probably need a little bit more time to sort of dig into the deeper thoughts, and it's not that dissimilar from the question I raised at the beginning, which is top down or bottom up. But just trying to sort of put it in a place where we're seeking to achieve the standards that have been put in place by with folks with lots of input. So Chancellor, did you have something to add here? And I see one other hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Board President. And perhaps I will underscore what is clear here, and that is the different but complementary interdependent roles between the Board of Trustee, and in this case, the Chancellor, and the delegated authority of the board through the Chancellor for the operations of the district. So that is, I just simply wanted to mention that, that we fully understand that, and that's how I believe some of this gets done, if you will. So I would just note that point, and it's in the standards, something that we support, believe in, and do. So Kevin, thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, and I would just add that the AGB, the Association of Governing Boards, ACCT, CCLC, and there's a lot of other alphabet out there. This is all aligned for effective board practice. This isn't different across the agencies. They're all aligned. As a matter of fact, these standards are across the nation with every different type of institutional accreditor. And I would just say, Trustee, that when we're talking about the definition is your board policies and your bylaws. It's how you define it. It is that body of work in which you operate and govern yourselves.
Right.
Okay.
And that's not to say you can't set goals and priorities for the district, and then you try to realize those through those policies that you have in place.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
let's move on. So in
Um,
the essence of time, yeah, if you want to go to the other question.
Yeah, let me get the other. Trustee Moreno, is this a follow-up question or is this a different matter question?
No, it's about a follow-up. Maybe you can buy some clarity. I've been was a board member or trustee at out in College of Canyons for 6 years. Now I've been a trustee at LA for about 8. And the difference between a single campus district or even a small district, a couple of campuses, is that in LA, we are confused. When accreditors come down, they are confused about how we operate. We talk about committees, and committees at a small school, you could have really involvement in how academics are, how the program is actually offered. But we as a board members, I tend to be critical of the fact that we as a campus, nine-member campus or 9-member college, what we have is a situation where we don't have the time to focus on the kind of specifics that local boards might. We're making policy in a general way. I always found it odd that we could ever be accused of micromanaging in light of our size. What really has to take place, I think, is a change in understanding how the accrediting team sees us. If they come from a single campus district, they don't fully understand that. It's very difficult. I think there's a lot of education required on both sides. I would only ask that in selecting your team review of the LA Community College District, that they need to be brought up with a certain kind of, or maybe a tutorial given to them as how a real multi-campus system operates, being as large as we are. And I think for instance, the word committee is misused in many instances. So I've made education on both sides, just a pitch for that. Maybe some of the criticism you're hearing now comes from that kind of misunderstanding of how we operate. And I can assure you, having been a board member at 2 different institutions and a president of a college for 18 years, that there is a substantial difference how we operate and how all other community colleges in the state operate, just as perhaps some assistance on your behalf in improving our ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, trustee. So from a single college to a multi-college district is our trustee here. So appreciate the comments. Kevin.
Yes, thank you for those comments. I appreciate that too. I would imagine the change in going from a single college to a 9-college district. Yes, it's been very interesting. So just quickly, standard 4C10 is really about, your board evaluation and that you have, you're regularly evaluating your performance and practices as a board, and you have, participation in board trainings and that you're making available to the public or the results of those evaluations, and that you're using the results of the evaluation for improvements where needed in terms of your performance. So Stephanie's going to talk a little bit about what accountability might look like or looks like.
So this is kind of a continuation of the discussion,
yeah.
But I think as we're thinking more about this, no matter whatever that body of work is, your policies, and the peer review team isn't coming in and saying your policies are right or wrong unless there's a specific policy criteria in the standards. The idea is that you own your narrative and you own your evidence. It is for your colleges to tell that story and for the team to validate it. So when the board, we're talking about this body of work of the policies, it's really about the direction of the how, the what, not the how, right? So I think one of the trustees just mentioned, like key performance indicators. Well, that's perfectly appropriate. Are they meeting the goals? Not how are they getting to meet the goals, what activities they're doing. That is really between your delegating authority to your chancellor, who then delegates authority to the college presidents and so on. But are those outcomes there? So things like when we talk about fiduciary responsibility. Of course, there's the fiscal solvency, but there's also, are you meeting your mission as far as student achievement? That has to be part of the conversation. So this is an area, the micromanagement of the board has gotten different boards into trouble. And like I said, this isn't just in California, this is across the nation. And so really finding that clear role between your one employee, your chancellor, and the leadership of the board.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Get more on
Oh,
this.
is that me for me? That's
Yeah.
for me too.
I think you kind of covered some of this.
Yeah, I think I did. So please take a look. Here are the things that we talk about on ways the board and the appropriate role of looking at academic quality, right? And these are some of the things that were mentioned earlier. Make sure that your policies align to academic quality and what those achievement metrics are. Make sure that data is given to you regularly and you get an analysis. You should get a regular update regarding the budget. You should have an understanding of what programs are being developed. You don't go into the curriculum committee and to tell them what programs to be developed, right? That's for them to do. So it's really understanding what those roles are. Does this clarify maybe some of the questions that we had a little bit earlier?
Trustees, for me, it's, you know, yeah, that question's, I think, for you, trustee.
What is it, Stephanie? Yes, from you. The presentation from, and Kevin, I don't know you, right? From this, right? Your presentation earlier was disjointed from what Stephanie, and I think Stephanie even alluded to that a little earlier. There's a disjointment here. And I think what Trustee Moreno clarified that language with regard to, you know, LACCD, that language has to be modified. You know, when it comes to multi-districts and really understanding LACCD, you know, before making presentations. But it does clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take it as the yes.
I apologize, Kevin, and I do our best to align, but you know, just like in peer review, sometimes we come with a different perspective. So.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so this slide is interesting, and we include this because not to say that this is an issue that you're facing within your board, but we see this issue arise sometimes with boards, and so we just like to talk about it as a reminder, because this is some areas where, you know, issues can arise. And this comes from our guide on accreditation for governing boards. And as you may be aware, ACCJC does not accredit boards, but the actions of boards can affect the college's accreditation status. So any recommendations from the board gets onto the college's, applies to each college within the district. So it's true that you were all elected and entrusted with responsibilities through the support of, you know, maybe constituencies or within geographical regions or interested, you know, organizations. But then once you've been elected to the board, it becomes your job, as I'm sure you're all aware, to, you know, serve the interests of the district or the colleges within that district in meeting their missions. So that's not to say that you can't bring discussions and interests from your constituencies into the conversation, but your obligation really and responsibilities to the district and the colleges, and not specifically to those interests or constituency groups. So and then we have a couple of standards that speak to this in particular, and that's 4C2, which states that governing boards act as a collective entity. And therefore, once the board reaches a decision, all board members act in support of that decision. Right. And so, you know, sometimes we see issues happening within boards where, you know, someone rushes out to the newspaper to share their personal opinion, you know, about or opposition to a decision that the board made. And then 4C12 states that the board delegates, and this is brought up earlier, the authority to the CEO or the chancellor in your case to administer the policies without the board interference, right? So that was talked about earlier. So you don't want to get involved in those day-to-day operations of the institution or directing individuals on how to do their jobs. So we've been talking for a bit, and I don't know if there's any other, some areas that you might have in mind or where you think boards might get into trouble with accreditors that you want to express. So this is your opportunity to let us know what you think might be issues.
Let me take the moment here to actually run through all the trustees, because I know a few of us have been able to express ourselves, but let me make sure that everybody has a chance to do that. So trustees, let me go ahead and kick off with some of the ones that have been quieter here during this meeting so far, and ask if Trustee Fong, any comments or questions here on concerns that you can list.
Thank you so much, President Bettis, and thank you to Kevin and to Stephanie for that presentation. Trustee Hoffman and I served on the IESS committee in 2015 and 2016 when we were going through the accreditation process throughout all 9 colleges. And we know the hard work that it takes that the district puts in, that our faculty, our staff, it's really a team effort at each of the colleges at the district level. I remember we had that big kickoff meeting at the Sheraton or wherever, and it really was a heavy lift among the district and the accreditation team. And so to Kevin, to Stephanie, thank you for providing your presentation here today. And we look forward to the future conversations as we proceed in these efforts. In terms of this going forward as well, and looking at the metrics, data, we're here, and we look forward to the engagement and how we can, the peer review process and what your assessment and how we can continue to affect change and to promote student success. So those are some of my initial comments, but I really want to just thank Kevin and Stephanie for being here today, and thank you, President Bettis, for bringing this forward. And we look forward to continuing our engagement together on the accreditation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Fong. Trustee Henderson, she's our newest trustee. So this is probably the process that's at the community college level, probably not familiar to her as much as at the Cal State level where she comes from. So Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, President Veras. I just want to thank you for the presentation. I have no specific questions right now. I'm just absorbing. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee. Trustee Bella.
No, just great presentation. I have never gone through this. I'm excited. So thank you both for this information, and I look forward to working with you. I have gone through accreditation as a K-12 board member. I served on a school board for 8 years. I was on various committees, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the K-12 process. I don't know it as much, and that's why I'm learning now at the community college level. I do, kind of like to hear more of the, and I think probably from the standpoint of, what we might get into trouble, I think looking at it from a more positive angle, is also good. Certainly, I think when it comes to policy, I really like what Kevin said. We are in charge, and, our constituents and students put us in charge of creating those policies that really are high level, in my opinion. I've always looked at it that way, in order to be accredited and definitely, continue to operate as a district, such a unique district. And then I think a lot of the times policies do cross, especially when we're looking at the way that other community college districts throughout America or throughout the state of California, for example, are setting policies on, ethnic studies, student housing, which some of it is a joint effort between, administration, our faculty, our students, and obviously with our shared governance, which is extremely, I believe, effective, and I'm a big proponent of here at the district. So, but I am excited to work with you guys, and really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you. Such a loaded question. And I think as long as we keep reminding ourselves, and Chancellor, you can vouch for me on this one, like we're the what and not the how. And I think, boards can get into trouble with accreditors when the board members feel like they're the how rather than the what. So, I think I'm excited to go through this process now that, the commission has kind of changed and you've changed the way you're doing business. And I think it's exciting. And I think it's, there's a lot more room for creativity. And, I think as a board, it'll be a really wonderful learning experience for us as well as we get presentations, from the colleges and their accreditation teams. So thank you. I thought this was an excellent presentation and I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Trustee Moreno, any other questions or comments, concerns? I think we've got yours on record already.
Yeah, I don't need to say anymore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. Trustee Buona, any other questions or concerns?
No, I think I'm just concerned that I'm not seeing the connection with outcomes to students, but maybe the process will guide me there.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've got a number of your concerns and others obviously are on record and noted. I will one thing, and I know the statement about we don't represent constituencies is always an interesting statement for me because this is an elected board and we actually we're the public trust. We're elected for the voters of our district elect us to be here, and it's always an interesting challenge because I've often been asked the question like, what do I feel like the role of the board is, and I'm just curious, Stephanie and Kevin offhand. I don't tend to view myself, and I don't tend to view the board as administration. That's essentially the chancellor and the administrators. But we are, voices that the public has chosen to entrust to ensure that their tax dollars are well spent and prioritized in the ways that are that meet the interest of the community in the best possible way. But it is an interesting balance to sort of move from sort of the entity that's most closely associated with the public trust and our employees who we all take oaths of office and allegiance to follow the laws of the state and the Constitution and all that good stuff. But it's a very interesting process going into the conversation about being representatives of the public and the public trust in the elected space. I think our colleagues at the state level get appointed, the CSU get appointed, the UC regents get appointed, but a handful of them go through an elected process. But we ourselves and basically the vast majority, or if all of the colleges in the state go through an election process where this issue of constituencies are there, but certainly at the core of it is the voters that entrust us essentially to protect the public's interest here. So it's always been like sort of an interesting thing to sort of devolve away from the fact, and oftentimes boards sort of co-align with the administration, but there is a nuance between sometimes where the administration at, and it's just something I always sort of struggle with as sort of the language maybe it alludes to it as constituencies, as sort of subgroup of constituencies, but I like to sort of think of it as a larger public trust situation and scenario. So it's my 2 cents. Sometimes I get in trouble with how I say it, but I try to walk a line that acknowledges the fact that it is an elected board as opposed to an appointed board.
So if I could address that, Mr. President, one of the feds in awarding Title IV, which is federal financial aid, says that all elected boards cannot have any undue political influence. As a matter of fact, we have a standard on that. And so that's what we're really talking about, is that you're not beholden to a particular group. And I have no doubt that as you are doing your work as board members, you are taking the entire institution into account. You're not looking or advocating for one specific group. And that's what this is about, is that you're taking all the information into account, and that you have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the institution, not to protect a particular group. Now, we could all say the particular group is students, right? But we're talking about all students, not just one particular group of students or one community. It's all your communities that you serve. So I hope that helps.
No, actually, very much so. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so
I
is that our
stopped sharing
presentation?
because, well, I think we covered the items that were left for the most part, and we've sent the presentation so you can look at. There's this last slide with resources on there that you can access if you're interested. And we've already taken more time than you were originally planning for us to take. So if there's not any remaining questions or comments, I think we're done.
Excellent. Well, we took the time we needed. So appreciate that. Thank you both for the presentation, and I look forward to both your roles as liaisons towards it for us. And I'm sure the trustees beyond this meeting will also have spaces that they reach out and have conversations via the chancellor and Mr. Corner here to make sure that we're clear and understand exactly what we're going to be doing through the next year. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all.
And I just want to say, President Vettis, I just want to tell Stephanie that I also taught political science and I loved it.
Okay, if we're on that bandwagon, me too, and I loved it.
Because you're all board members. That's why. It's why you're doing what you're doing.
I know. I'm going to plug the history teachers out there. So, okay, thank you all. Chancellor, thank you so much, both of you. So, Chancellor, I believe we're on to the next part of our agenda, and it is. Hold on, if we can get our live agenda back up for us. Thank you.
Yes, it's going to be a public comment, then we'll recess for items not on the agenda, and then we'll recess the closed session for a quick.
Okay. Excellent. Well, there's a quick announcements and indications of future proposed actions by members of the Board of Trustees. I will make this general, and if anybody wants to jump in, please raise your hand. The General Counsel has sent us some memos. I have received some questions about future Board of Trustee meetings, potentially in person, and those are the kinds of things that we'll have to dialogue about. I know the governor has given some general indications about the middle of June of what opening means. And it is my hope that the chancellor and the general counsel will be able to, vet through them, understand what those sort of statements mean, and of course, there is some differences of opinion in terms of like the CDC has right now issued an opinion that's not necessarily completely reflected by our local county public health in terms of mask wearing and those kinds of things, but. They are things that colleagues will have to discuss soon enough. The general counsel, I believe, has sent all of us legal memos on all the vaccines that are available. And I know some of that relates to future policy making and future return to in-person conversations. But I did want, for those that haven't had a chance to sort of express their view, I'd invite you to reach out to me or reach out to the chancellor to talk about it, because it will be a conversation point in the next 2 months. So, if there's no other comments here, we're going to jump to public comment. Now, this is a study session meeting, so this is not necessarily like the regular board meeting where we have, sort of members of the resource tables and all that having spaces to comment. But I did, if they are in the audience, and we do have about 80 plus folks in the audience, I do want to invite the resource table, if they would like to make comments, to be able to make them here as part of public comment, and we'll work with you guys. Are all really honestly very good about timetables, but if comments were not suggested and offered already or submitted in cards, if you can please raise your hand. We're going to do essentially we have two sections of comments. One's are for items not on the agenda, and then the other is for closed sessions item. There's one closed session item that's listed there, but colleagues, if it's okay with you, I actually, and Chancellor and General Counsel, if there's no problem here, can we just combine both comments together and take them this way? We'll do 2 minutes per, since there's not any particular agenda item, public employee, but we'll give every speaker 2 minutes to address. I'm seeing nodding, so we'll go that way. And I don't see any objections from the board. So with that, I see, well, first let me ask Crystal or Lupe, do we have any speakers cards requesting time? We'll take those first, and then afterwards we'll take all the other attendees who have their hands raised.
Okay, we have 10 individuals that sent an email just a few moments ago to speak on agenda items. Nothing for closed session as of right now. So I have a list and I could start reading them out. 2 minutes? Well,
let me do this. Let me start before the list. Let me check and see if there was any members of the resource table that would like to make. I can take them on the front end of our list since they're generally participants in our meeting here, and then we'll take the cards after, and then the remaining individuals that are there. So if there's any members of the resource table that would like to make a comment, I know I got a quick note from President Waddell from the AFT. So if she is there and available, we can move her over and give her an opportunity to speak. And if there's any other members of the resource table, we'll take them in the order that they raise their hands. So Joanne, are you here?
I am here.
Scroll. Okay, I see you. President Waddell.
Can you hear
me?
Welcome.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Thank you, Board President Veras. We've heard a lot today in various meetings about re-engagement, and my comments apply to the re-engagement discussion. And to note that we've been building toward re-engagement since we left campus 15 months ago, beginning with an MOU for hard to convert classes. Make no mistake that our commitment to our students is, if anything, stronger today than at any time over the past 15 months. Faculty transition to providing instruction and student services remotely, a huge new lift for 80% of our faculty, some with little to no training in distance learning, but more planning to do so now. Yes, we have asked for recognition and acknowledgement for this effort. The federal government responded. We believe the trustees will respond additionally. But beyond tangible acknowledgement, we need assurance that those who return to campus will return to campuses that are safe and clean, with district-wide work environment committee oversight now required of the district by no less than the Los Angeles County Superior Court. Further, our return to campus must be met by a pattern of notifications to the exclusive bargaining units that is very time certain, as spelled out in AB 685, not shared with the bargaining units, quote, when you get around to it. Last Friday, the Guild listened to 300 Guild members give testimony about their concerns for safety, cleanliness, recognition, and respect. Some of those faculty felt compelled to share their commitment and concerns with you in this meeting. Their words should not be taken lightly. These are real faculty with real concerns about life and death issues for themselves, their families, their colleagues, and their students. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other members of the resource table?
Hazel, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, good evening, Chancellor, Board of Trustees, Administration, colleagues. My name is Hazel Alonzo. I'm here as the President for AAT 1521A Staff Guild. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak today. I will also be speaking on the re-engagement efforts that we are in the process of speaking with management. But before I do that, I did want to acknowledge that May 16th to May 22nd is the Classified Employee Appreciation Week. Classified employees have continued to serve as an integral part of public education. And I know sometimes we are overlooked in the acknowledgement of our hard work. So I do ask that we all be remembered, the classified staff that serve LACCD day in and day out. But with that acknowledgement, I want to segue into the conversation in regards to the return to work discussions that we're having with management. I believe that our concerns with the classified is that despite the previous advisories that we have since read and have been readily provided to us, there still continues to be a lack of guidelines and outlines that as to what is expected upon our return. Case in point, the SAFE app application that was implemented on May 1st, different colleges are using that app. And that lack of uniformity is a cause for concern for the classified staff. Another contention that we have is that a lot of the odd responsibilities that will come about with the re-engagement will fall on the classified staff, such as temperature checks that are being asked currently, as well as confirming that the work area is clean and maybe even the sanitary issues. And lastly, the main concern we have, which is what we are continuing to discuss in management, I apologize, is the fact that with this June 15 target date that LA County is proposing, there's this misconception that it's automatically going to alleviate the fears of our employees and our personnel. We don't know, are they going to do away with mask requirements? Are they going to do away with social distancing? And there doesn't seem to be a recognition that our staff and our faculty and our students, their fears don't automatically get alleviated. And I think it's the district's job to provide more resources readily available for us to feel secure with coming back. So with that, the classified staff strongly urge the district and the board to have continuous conversations regarding first the LACCD June 1st target date, as well as the June 15 that LA County is putting forth. So with that, thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Hazel. Next on our list.
Okay, I'm going to go by the list that I was provided. I think that's it for the resource table. Barbara Anderson. Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I apologize.
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry I'm outside and so I'm having a challenge, but I want to say that I really appreciate all the hard work that's been done. Faculty have really been working diligently, and all employees have, staff, administration. Of course, our students have suffered the most, but we're in a marathon. We're running so hard and so fast, and we're at that 22-mile, and we're really at that wall. Please, I urge you, do meet and resolve these issues so that we can move forward to address the needs of our students and to help them achieve all of their goals. Thank you for your time.
Clyde Gordon.
Yes, thank you and good evening, trustees. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you regarding some of the experiences that both counselors and students have experienced at LA Valley College. My name is Clive Gordon, Department Chair of Counseling at LA Valley College and a proud member of the local AFT 1521. Over the past year, I've spoken with many of my counselors within my department regarding the effects that COVID has had on them and their families. Sadly, all counselors have been affected by this disease in one way or the other. Some of them have been hospitalized or have family members who were or are sick, and even some who have had loved ones that passed away due to this pandemic. The pain, emotions, and challenges that it has placed on them and their families is too much to describe in this short amount of time. Because of this traumatic experience in their lives, the mere thought of returning to campus and provide in-person or face-to-face counseling have created daily stresses and built up anxiety as they continue to counsel their services even today. To add to this, these professionals on a daily basis listen to the many stories that our students tell them on a daily basis, and they are experiencing the same traumatic experience over and over. Please imagine that you've just recovered from COVID or have a loved one die from it, and on a weekly basis, your students are telling you the same experiences over and over. How could we cope with this? Further, because of these experiences, My colleagues on campus and across our district have serious concerns regarding the health and safety concerns of our office settings and work environment if we return to campus in the fall. They are literally scared to go back to an office that does not allow for 3 to 6 feet of social distancing, resulting in them being within arm's length of a student whom we do not know if he or she was vaccinated or not.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up. Thank you. Gloria Dimes? Gloria?
Hello. Yes.
Thank you. 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Gloria San Jose Dames, Child Development Faculty from Los Angeles Valley College, and I am a member of the local AFT 1521. Good night, Professor. Have a good sleep, Professor. Happy Sunday, Professor. I got COVID-19, Professor, and I am just really scared. My aunt, my grandparents died from COVID-19. I have no energy left to work in the class, Professor. Please help me. These are real words from students. They are the regular and ongoing messages that faculty has been receiving since the global pandemic hit us. Our students need us more than ever. We are the frontline workers in the academic world. We feel overworked, laboring 60 to 70 hours a week so we can provide the best quality of education to our students and fulfill our duties as faculty members. LACCD faculty deeply cares about the students, and like our students, we are highly resilient. In the spring of 2020, faculty were asked to do more using whatever technology they had at their homes, if any. And those who were able to afford it purchased better computers, microphones, ergonomic chairs, to name a few. Our entire faculty from LACCD made the Herculean effort to convert all our classes into online in only 2 weeks. I was one of the faculty who offered their help 24/7 to colleagues who needed training and support to convert the current courses into online teaching using Canvas. It was as overwhelming to me as it was to them. Our spring break was not a holiday week, but a work week. Although it was not contractual, we still worked on converting all our courses online so they could be ready for our LACCD students. Every faculty member knows that we are working harder than ever than before. And we find it challenging to draw the line between our personal life with our teaching work. Our district must address the personal and work challenges that faculty faces and honor faculty's labor-intensive online teaching work.
Time's up.
Si se puede. Thank you.
Next one is Zal Bellendorf.
Hi, my name is Xiao Bellendorf. I'm a librarian at Valley College and a member of AFT 1521. Let's take a second to remember what it was like to be in a pre-pandemic college library. A crowded gathering place of students, the center of the campus community. I have concerns about the safety of myself, my colleagues, and students if we reopen the library before the pandemic is over. We do not currently have the level of staffing to do symptom check, monitor the library capacity, or enforce mask and social distance rules, in addition to providing the core library services to students. I have been vigilant to stay healthy, not only for myself, but for my husband, who recently recovered from a serious heart condition, and for my elderly father, who has mobility issues. I ask for your help to allocate adequate resources to keep all of us and our loved ones safe when we return to in-person library services. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you. Stuart Suki. 2 minutes.
Trustees, thank you for hearing my words today. My name is Dr. Stuart Suki, and I am an associate professor at East Los Angeles College in the Department of Life Sciences. I'm a member of AFT 1520. As a virologist with a PhD from the University of California, Irvine, and a resident in California for nearly 20 years, offering the opinion of what a safe return to campus means during a global pandemic. like other deadly, highly infectious diseases, is now preventable through vaccination. Decades of data show that when a large percentage of the population receives a vaccine, the chance of these diseases spreading and killing approaches zero. This is herd immunity. The vaccine program in the United States has been so effective that when new cases of preventable diseases occur, are typically in places where folks have not been immunized, or these new cases are brought into the US by been immunized in their home country. The point is that vaccination works. COVID-19 vaccination, current public health data shows herd immunity has not yet been reached in LA County, California, in the US. Vaccination rates are decreasing, meaning it will take longer to reach herd immunity than previously anticipated, and only 39% of folks in California have actually been fully vaccinated. An additional 14% have received their first dose, but there is an increasing number of folks refusing to get their second dose. To date, the LACCD does not require proof of vaccination for any communicable diseases, while neighboring Cal State and UC schools mandate and enforce vaccination policies as a matter of course. COVID-19 deaths are still being reported in LA County and neighboring counties. Given these facts, I ask the board to recognize that we are asking students to congregate for a significant period of times in areas where vaccination against the deadly COVID-19 is not exist. Would you breathe the air in my classroom? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. David Esperanza. David, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead, sir.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. David Esparza, a counselor at LA Trade Tech College. I appreciate your time. My desire to return to campus is quite high, but it's overweighted by my personal and family situation, and I'm sure that I'm not the only faculty member or staff or facilities personnel or students whose situation and decision on returning to campus revolves around the health and safety of either themselves or a family member who have compromised immune systems. That being said, while true discussions, concerns, and dialogue towards all the possibilities of safety and support for all constituents, student services in my case, have not moved as quickly or as focused as we would like. We've learned a lot through the pandemic, and I think it is vital that the district not only maintain, but strengthen and enhance the support and services for those who choose or are required to remain virtual and therefore thrive. So for some of us, and I truly mean this, it's a quality of life decision not to return to campus. Thank you.
Tina, you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
My name is Tina Wyrens, and I teach math at Harbor College, and I'm here to talk about my concerns related to returning to the classroom. My main concern is that the classroom will turn into a place where people get sick. With the way COVID is transmitted, sitting in a classroom for upwards of 2 hours is very concerning for me. No one likes getting sick, but COVID can have long-reaching effects. Because of comorbidities, my husband has always had a harder time with any type of respiratory illnesses, and we are very fearful of how COVID would affect him. We have always taken COVID seriously because of this. We social distance, we wear masks in public, we sanitize what comes into our house. We just don't take chances. My dad is in his 80s and has stage 3 kidney failure and has a defibrillator pacemaker. He currently is in our family bubble. I need to check in on him often in person due to his medical conditions. With all of his ailments, I'm afraid he would not survive having COVID. I'm also concerned about my students. Many live in multi-generational households, and I can imagine they have the same fears I have about bringing home COVID to family members. A classroom should be a safe haven for all students. If students are fearful of the classroom and what it could mean for them or their families, learning cannot take place effectively. Having a teacher that is concerned about being there will also mean that learning cannot take place effectively. We need a safe environment. We need to feel confident that our classrooms will remain a safe place for both our students and for us. Thank you.
Next, Gary.
Yes, thank you. My name is Gary Willoughby. I'm a faculty member at the West Los Angeles College in the art department. There's been much hard work necessary to go from the classroom setting to the remote online learning in a very short period of time. I realized quickly that I had a lot to learn and a lot to buy to make many online remote learning experience successful. I started with zero experience in remote learning. I had none. And so I contacted a faculty member at West to help me create the first early steps necessary for my classes. I took the first half of the certification course and will take the last half this summer. I soon realized that I had to buy some added equipment for the classes, such as a new laptop, a new printer, and a flatbed scanner. And these and other materials would help me create a remote art class. But I knew that these sacrifices were necessary for student success. The district should honor and should respect and put to serve our students and the LACC at large. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one I think is Dean's List, ELAC.
Yes, and I'm speaking on a non-agenda item, so just a fair warning. So here goes. As you know, I'm a theater major, so it doesn't matter. I take a class at Southwest, but I go to ELAC. So Professor Rodney Scott at ELAC Theater, I consider to be the nicest person in the world, and he'll work with anyone. And even more importantly, he gave me a chance when Professor Kelly Hogan would simply ignore students. At the end of the day, I truly feel that Professor Rodney Scott should be given the honor he deserves, a promotion to full-time and or tenured position at ELAC Theater when Professor Hogan retires in June 2021. And I believe it is a long time coming. You ignored Professor Rodney Scott in 2019, but you cannot ignore him now. This board needs to do the right thing and give Professor Rodney Scott a full-time tenured position, and if necessary, hire additional faculty or schedule more hours to cover Professor Hogan's retirement. Professor Rodney Scott has earned a tenured position at ELAC Theater. This would be a sign you're listening to the students of this major to promote Professor Rodney Scott to full-time and or tenured status. So please give it to him. He has earned it. Thank you.
Okay, next is Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Chancellor Rodriguez. My name is Sarah Crackiola Garcia, and I am the Department Chair of Communication Studies at City College and an e-board member of AFT 1521. Now, before I start talking, I do want to thank those of you who are actively listening to what we are saying. And I'm a little concerned with some of you who are not. As a communication professor, that is very concerning to me. I am speaking today because I'm concerned about the safety of our students, faculty, and staff as we are talking about possible re-engagement. Pre-pandemic, I had concerns about the safety and cleanliness of our facilities. Often there was no soap or toilet paper in the restrooms. I've had students bring supplies to help clean my classroom. I did not trust our facilities pre-pandemic, and I don't trust them to be safe enough for the fall, especially since we were told that our classrooms would not be cleaned consistently throughout the day. While I am fully vaccinated, I have 2 newborn twins who cannot be vaccinated, and I have to do my best to protect my family, and I make strategic choices about where I go if I leave my house. I do not feel safe at work, and I have numerous faculty members in my department who are high risk and feel pressured to return and risk their own safety because they're adjunct faculty. Before we return, there needs to be a suitable corrective action plan that ensures the safety of everyone on our campus. So please do not rush us back. Get a good plan in place, and I'm sure we all want to go back, but we want to go back when it's safe to do so. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you. Edith Garcia. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Edith Garnica Diaz, a CAT member, AFT 1521, faculty at Los Angeles Trade Tech, and I'm from the Culinary Arts Department. Faculty have been sacrificing ourselves and our personal resources like gas, water, and other household resources to keep going with the classes from the beginning of the pandemic. We are now running on fumes, and to try to convert courses that really can only be taught in person. Our students are lacking essential equipment to complete professional baking and cooking lessons at home. You know, we have students that are using toaster ovens and microwaves because they don't have ovens. You know? So we ask you to please consider coming up with a good plan to keep our campus clean, and we can return to campus and help our CET classes thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so far that's all I have. We're good.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no others, we'll close. We'll take your question in a minute, Trustee Hoffman, but if there's no other, this is public comments. If there's no other public comments, then we will close. Trustee, before we're set to go to closed session, if you can make a quick comment. I don't know if this is related to the agenda or something else, but go ahead.
It'll be super quick. First of all, thank you to all the faculty members who spoke today and sent us emails. The board is listening. Chancellor, could you just take a quick minute, because we just had the training from ACCJC, to explain to the ELAC Theater Arts student, because she does come to our meetings often, about how the hiring of faculty is done and how the board is not involved in the actual hiring of faculty. And I think that might provide some clarity. If you could just comment on that publicly, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I'll do even more than that. If that student can send her email to Lupe, I'm happy to call her and walk her through as much time she needs. Why don't we, I'll commit to doing that.
Okay.
That would be great.
In the interest of, just to ensure that the board isn't involved in the faculty hiring process.
No, the board approves the fact at the very end of the process, and that's a very campus-driven, specific activity. But I'm happy to go through details with the student.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you, Trustee. All right, with that, colleagues, we are set to enter into closed session now. Thank you, members of the public, for joining us today. I hope you got a little sense of ACCJC. All of the faculty, you guys played an incredible role in what happens over the next year. And so we look forward to that continued sort of effort together with accreditation. But if there's no objections now from the board, we have one item on the closed session and a couple instructions from the chancellor from there forward. So colleagues, we'll adjourn to closed session, and then we'll return at the conclusion of that to provide a report of actions taken in closed session. So with that, if there's no objections, we'll go ahead and recess to closed session.
Perfect. Thank you.